Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive in today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
America, Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. I told you about these polls. Fox has a poll out. Could be right, could be wrong. It's of likely voters, of likely voters. We're head-to-head. Biden has a 48% lead since the first time in October. Of course, the popular vote doesn't determine who the president is, but there you go. There's another poll. Should we believe it or not? Or do we only believe the good ones? You fight like you're behind. One of the things they have noted is that the number one issue now is democracy. Why? Because Biden pushes it everywhere, that Trump is a danger to democracy. The media push it everywhere. He's paid for ads. Biden has to push it everywhere. And so it's everywhere. And yet it's Biden who's destroying constitutional republicanism. We'll call it democracy just for argument's sake. Biden's the one who defied the Supreme Court that told him he could not forgive student loans. Biden has violated federal immigration laws with his open borders policies. Biden has violated congressional power by granting health care benefits to illegal aliens and granting amnesty to illegal aliens. Biden has used the Justice Department to target his political enemies, including Donald Trump. Biden has violated federal law by withholding funds and ammunition from Israel. And the list goes on. That's why I fight the battle of substance and ideas and lies and policy. And I spend almost no time on polls. Am I the only one who does that, Mr. Producer? I don't know. When I turn on TV, all I see are polls. This pollster says this poll says that. Who cares? Who cares? Now, National Review Online, there's a great piece by the editors, Biden's lawless mass amnesty. Introducing his latest quote-unquote immigration relief policy at the White House yesterday, Biden told the assembled crowd that the changes he was making had been considered by Congress and had passed. Then, correcting himself, he conceded that this wasn't true. Rather, he admitted he was announcing yet another executive order. That Biden chose the 12th anniversary of DACA to promulgate his alterations is fitting. Indeed, all that was missing was a commemorative sign that read, 12 years of ignoring the Constitution. The creation of DACA, you may recall, was marked by President Obama's astonishing insistence that if Congress won't act, I will, quote unquote. Prior to its announcement, Obama had explained frequently that he did not have the power to rewrite immigration law on the fly. I'm not a king, Obama said often. I'm not an emperor. But with a tough re-election fight looming, he forgot all that and did it anyway. Civically, this represented a low moment in American history. That President Biden aspires to celebrate it, let alone to build on it, is damning in the extreme. That Biden chose the 12th anniversary of DACA to promulgate his alterations is fitting. Indeed, all that was missing was a commemorative sign, as we pointed out. Ultimately, that is all that matters. Shortly after Biden's speech, the White House released a fact sheet, quote unquote, which it recorded up front that since his first day in office, Biden has called on Congress to secure our border and address our broken immigration system. Notably missing in the subsequent pages was any explanation of why. Having failed to achieve his preferred legislative changes, Biden believed he had the right to issue the adjustments himself. No laws were cited, no court cases were invoked, no principles of any kind were outlined. President Biden, the document explained, has announced new actions. Yes, but that's not the way you run this country. And yet it is. And yet it is. Biden is violating the law left and right, and the fact that he has the upper hand on this is very troubling to me. That means the Republican Party, conservative media, patriot media haven't done enough. Haven't done enough to explain that it is Biden who's the dictator. It is Biden who is fascistic. It is Biden who hates democracy. And you're living it each and every day. You're living it each and every day. I don't know why it is so hard for Republicans, spokesmen, and hosts to speak the truth in a compelling way. It's like abortion. They support infanticide. Just keep saying it because it's true. They want no limits on abortion. The American people do. They want no parental notification when it comes to abortion. The American people do. And the list goes on. Make the case. Or the case will be made for them, and they will make your case too, and lie about it. The issue of democracy, don't let anything get by when it comes to Biden. Everything should be challenged and attacked. Democracy. Biden has a funny way of showing his support of democracy. He defies the Supreme Court. He defies federal immigration law. He defies separation of powers and the power of Congress when it comes to spending. He orders the Justice Department, or at least he uses the Justice Department, to target his political enemies. That would seem bad enough. Trump hasn't done anything. They keep saying if Trump's elected, then this will happen and that will happen. Well, things are happening now. Things are happening right now. So if I'm debating Biden, and of course I'm not, so it's all swell for me to say, but if I'm debating Biden, I do it this way. Under what authority did you have the power to defy the Supreme Court when it came to student loans? Under what authority did you have the power to destroy our immigration laws on our border when it comes to illegal immigration? Under what authority did you have the power to grant illegal aliens health care and grant them amnesty? Under what authority does your administration have the power to try and imprison your political opponent? Where do these authorities come from? They don't come from the Constitution. They don't come from the rule of law. You issue executive orders like you're Joseph Stalin issuing fiats. So I want to know, Joe Biden, let's just take one of them. Let's just take one of them, the immigration laws that you have eviscerated. Under what authority did you have to grant amnesty to 500,000 people last week? Under what authority did you have to grant Obamacare, that is, national health care to illegal aliens last month? Under what authority did you have the power to fly 500,000 illegal aliens into the United States? What authority? Don't you think that's the way to approach this during the debate, Mr. Producer? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, the war on our justice system, the vicious assault on President Trump, has sent our nation into uncharted waters. And trust me when I say things are going to get worse before they get better. I truly believe that. The political turmoil and uncertainty that lie ahead could have severe consequences for our economy and financial markets. But in times of crisis, there's always opportunity. And right now, I see that opportunity in diversification with gold and silver. As these tensions rise and the dollar's future becomes increasingly uncertain, gold has the potential to go even higher. That's why I trust Advantage Gold. They're experts at helping Americans take steps to help safeguard their wealth with precious metals. Call them right now. 800-900-8000. Don't wait. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit, plus a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. The future may be unpredictable, but your financial security doesn't have to be. So call Advantage Gold right now. 800-900-8000. There's no risk. There's no pressure. That's 800-900-8000. Get your special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 for qualified customers today. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Let me try it again. You say you love democracy. You do not. Under what authority did you defy a Supreme Court decision that said you did not have the power to forgive student loans? Under what authority did you destroy 50 years of immigration law so you could open the border to terrorists and criminals and 20 million aliens? Under what authority did you grant millions of illegal immigrants amnesty and taxpayer-funded health care? I didn't say that before, did I, Mr. President? No, I don't think so. Let me keep writing it, because I'm going to have it for myself here. Just bear with me. Now, what authority did you block weapons to Israel in the middle of a war when Congress authorized those weapons for Israel? Under what authority, as senator, private citizen, and vice president, did you steal classified information and reveal it to a publisher? Are those fair enough, Mr. Producer? I'm running against you in part to save our democracy from you. Right? I think so. That's my thought. And put it in the form of a question, because I think that will befuddle a man who's easily befuddled. But that's an issue that must be taken on. You know? You agree with that? I think it must be taken on, especially if it's now the top issue or one of the top issues. And the Democrats are going to make it a top issue whether we like it or not. Well, that's the way you have to deal with this stuff, as far as I'm concerned. Now, more. Let's see here. For example, Fox News. Risk of terror attack on U.S. soil rises to alarmingly high level, experts warn. Now, we're being warned this about every day now. Michael Dorgan, the threat of a major terror event taking place on U.S. soil is at a dangerously high level, with big cities like New York and Washington most vulnerable to an attack. Terror experts are warning. Who's responsible for that? It's been nearly 23 years since nearly 3,000 people perished on 9/11, but even though surveillance and airport security has been beefed up, the world has changed considerably since then. Excuse me. Technology has become cheaper and more advanced. The internet is lightning fast, and America's open border means millions of unvetted people from all over the world are now living among the general population and continue to pour in at record rates. We're in a period where a number of factors are combining to make a terrorist attack on the homeland far more likely than it perhaps had been, says Paul Morrow. By the way, I love this guy. He's on Fox. I don't know him. I've never met him. I've never talked to him. He is top shelf. Paul Morrow, a retired NYPD inspector, he's also a lawyer, who worked in counterterrorism for nearly 15 years. Morrow said the risk of a potential new attack should be assessed in a criminal context. Who has the means, motive, and opportunity to successfully execute a deadly plot? You know what? God willing, if Trump's president, this guy should be the FBI director. What do you think of that, Mr. Producer? The world has gotten a lot smaller since 9/11. You've got drones. The interconnectivity of the internet is more ubiquitous in the areas that maybe didn't have the connectivity. Excuse me. You can get an uplink using something like an Elon Musk satellite, and you can get online from the mountains of the Hindu Kush, where the hell that is. You've got AI capabilities and so forth. And Morrow said the threats would likely emanate from current hotspots around the globe. He's 100% right. The Middle East, where Iran is a live threat. An Iranian major who was taken out by Trump, Soleimani. They might be looking to even a score. It's just a lot. He said we've let 10 to 20 million illegals into the country with little or no vetting. It's canard to think they're all just from small towns in Mexico or Bolivia or Ecuador or something like that. Former CIA Deputy Director Michael Morrell also sounded off in a recent Foreign Affairs op-ed, writing that the terror threat posed by vulnerabilities at the U.S.-Mexico border is blinking red. Isn't this one of the guys, one of the 51 who signed that letter? Could be. I just don't recall. FBI Director Christopher Wray and U.S. Central Command General Michael Kurilla said there are serious threats posed by terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, also known as the Islamic State and Islamic State K, ISIS-K. And forces under Kurilla's command have been battling ISIS targets in Iraq and Syria, killing or capturing almost 1,000 terror fighters. Last year, nearly 500 ground operations and 45 airstrikes, according to Foreign Affairs. Look at that. The Islamo-Nazis are fighting each other. Who would have thought? Kurilla, in March 2023, testified to the Senate Armed Services Committee, called particular attention to ISIS-K and warned that the group would be able to carry out an operation against U.S. or Western... Anyway, you get the drift. You get the drift. He's running around as Joe Biden talking about democracy. Talking about democracy. I have another one, Mr. Producer. Under what authority did you remember the social sites? Under what authority did you monitor, right? Did you monitor our social sites? I'm writing it down, as you can hear. And what would you say? He threatened them? Yeah, good point. And censor information that you disagreed with from the public. I think that's a good point. How about this? Under what authority did you and your Justice Department decide to threaten and monitor parents? Threaten and monitor parents who challenge school boards. The list goes on and on, folks. The problem would be for Donald Trump, you can't memorize these things. You can't bring notes with you. But Joe Biden, I don't know, Joe Biden has never supported our constitutional system, ever. Ever. In fact, I have a better idea, Mr. Producer, in addition to this. Since when was supporting democracy opposing public school integration? I'll be right back. My fellow Americans, the phony conviction of Donald Trump has sent a clear message. Our country is in deep trouble. Our rule of law is under attack, and the integrity of our elections may well be in jeopardy. In times of political chaos like this, it's crucial to protect your wealth and secure your financial future. That's where my good friends at Advantage Gold come in. Please call them now. 800-900-8000. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit to help protect your money against times like these with physical precious metals. Plus, tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. No one can predict the future, but you can prepare for it. Call Advantage Gold today, 800-900-8000. Get your free gold and silver kit right now. Plus, Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 for qualified customers today. 800-900-8000. Give it a try. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professionals.
The Mark Levin Show, the pool feed for the conservative media. Dive in now. 877-381-3811.
This is going to be a rock'em sock'em campaign because Joe Biden is and always has been fundamentally a lowlife. And the media are more than happy to meet him in the gutter and below. But he is a lowlife, and he's always been a lowlife. I know that. He was the senator in Delaware, and I grew up in the border state of Pennsylvania. I know all about him. He will say anything and he will do anything. But this idea that he can pretend that he's a defender of democracy cannot stand while he's destroying it. Exactly how has he promoted constitutional republicanism? What has he done? Nothing. Nothing. I want to move on. I've been talking about Amy Coney Barrett now for some time. She posed as a really wonderful constitutionalist. Conservatives rallied around her. The Federalist Society rallied around her. She was considered the gold standard. She was a professor for 15 years. She had a lot of writings. People reviewed them. And when Kavanaugh was the first nominee, people said, well, that was a mistake. Barrett should have been the first nominee, or at least before, I should say, Kavanaugh. Turns out, at least of late, Kavanaugh is more solid than Barrett. It didn't take long. And this has been noticed by everybody. I've gotten at least 5 emails on this subject, because there's an article in the New Republic, which is a radical left-wing, I don't even know if it's a magazine anymore, but whatever it is, in which this individual highlighted something that she wrote, which deserved to be highlighted. Amy Coney Barrett breaks with Supreme Court originalists. She's still conservative, but she seems to want to prevent her Supreme Court colleagues from going too far too quickly. You see, what happens, ladies and gentlemen, is that power goes to your head. It's the rare Supreme Court justice, it's the rare president, it's the rare anybody who has enormous powers but seeks to exercise them in a moderate way. I don't mean to advance moderate agendas. Seeks to exercise enormous power in a moderate way. And in this country, as Montesquieu pointed out generally before there was an America, but in this country, it is very important that we hold on to traditions. It's very important that we hold on to history. It's very important that we, when it comes to the Constitution, try and discern what the framers and the ratifiers intended. Now, sometimes that's difficult, but you still make the effort. That puts a limitation, intellectually and otherwise, on where you're going to go when you're writing a decision. You're a Supreme Court justice. That's all you are. That's all you are. It's not a Politburo. It's certainly not supposed to be. That's what the Democrats want. They want a radical, Marxist, left-wing Politburo. We, you and I, we just want a court where justices do their very, very best to uphold and interpret the Constitution. That's considered right-wing. But then again, the Constitution is considered a white racist document by the same people, so we blow them off. And so over at the Republic, somebody named Matt Ford wrote today, Justice Amy Coney Barrett did something interesting last week in an otherwise uninteresting case. The Supreme Court delivered its ruling last Thursday in Vidal versus Elster, which involved the First Amendment claims in trademark law. The justices ultimately concluded that the government can refuse to register trademarks that use other people's names without their permission. While the decision was unanimous, the reasoning behind it was not. Justice Clarence Thomas, who is a constitutional originalist, and there's no other legitimate way, by the way, to interpret the Constitution. That doesn't mean originalists don't come up with different conclusions. Scalia and Thomas didn't always agree. They often did. But it means you go through pretty much the same processes, apply the same standards in trying to interpret the Constitution, even though you may come up with a different result. If you don't embrace that form of analysis, then you're basically a cowboy on the court. You act like you're a free agent to do whatever you wish, with a lifetime appointment and no ability to remove you in any effective or practical way. Justice Thomas took what seemed like a classically original path. He surveyed centuries of historical evidence in the English and American legal systems, concluded that there was a strong historical tradition of restricting unauthorized trademarks of other people's names, and ruled the First Amendment allowed it. Justice Barrett rejected Thomas's reasoning outright. Now listen to this carefully. Now I warned you on the immunity discussion that she was way out in left field. I don't know how she's going to rule. I'm not trying to predict that. I'm telling you that when she was asking questions, it had nothing to do with the law. She wrote this, really aimed at the majority opinion that was signed on to. Quote, relying exclusively on history and tradition may seem like a way of avoiding judge-made tests, she wrote in a concurring opinion. But a rule rendering tradition dispositive is itself a judge-made test, which is ridiculous, but let's go on. I do not see a good reason to resolve this case using that approach rather than by adopting a generally applicable principle. What does that mean? A generally applicable principle. What does that mean? It means nothing. So she's saying if you look at history and tradition and you try and discern what was meant by the words, what were the intent of the people who wrote the Constitution and ratified it, that's a judge-made test. Funny, she didn't say that when she was up for confirmation, because I think that would have made a huge difference. I certainly would have opposed her and rejected this altogether. Now, Matt Ford, I don't know him, but he writes at a left-wing magazine, so I have to assume he's at least somewhat of that ilk. While this might seem like a minor difference in practical terms, he says, it's a significant one in legal theory. The conservative justice's favorite method of constitutional interpretation these days, he says, is originalism, where judges are supposed to interpret the Constitution's meaning based on its original public meaning. It would be too much to say that Barrett is rejecting this approach in whole or in part, but she appears increasingly willing to call out other originalists when their evidence of a historical tradition is weak. Even more, well, that wasn't weak. You just said earlier in your piece, the historical tradition was looked at. A strong historical tradition. So what do you mean it was weak? Even more importantly, she's unwilling to let it be the exclusive means by which she reads the Constitution, and that's the kicker. Well, what's the other means? And so she's drifting. I could tell you, and did tell you, I could tell that she was drifting a couple of years ago. And I told you she's drifting. And I warned you that she's drifting. Not that there's anything either of us can do about it. At issue in this particular case was a trademark involving former Donald Trump. Steve Elster, a labor lawyer based in California, sought to trademark the phrase Trump too small along with an illustration of a hand making a small gesture that, the left is very good at stupid stuff. Elster's mark was an apparent reference to an exchange that we're aware of. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office denied Elster's application, citing a provision in the Lanham Act, the flagship federal trademark law known as the Names Clause. You know, my wife knows all this stuff. She used to practice, among other things, trademark and copyright law, as well as immigration and contract law. She's actually quite brilliant about these things. The clause generally forbids the agency from registering trademarks that include a name, portrait, or signature identifying a particular living individual without that person's consent. According to the PTO, the clause avoids confusion in the marketplace over whether certain people endorse certain products, which could unfairly bolster one's own goods or even undercut a competitor. Stay with me. Elster sued the agency in federal court on First Amendment grounds. He argued the PTO examiner had discriminated against him based on the content of Elster's proposed trademark, which I guess was Trump's name. The Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, which exclusively hears appeals from certain federal agencies, sided with Elster in a ruling 2 years ago. So the PTO asked the Supreme Court last year to intervene and reinstate the names clause. So the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a creation of the Congress, said, yeah, it's a First Amendment issue. Reversing what had been decades of interpretation. So while the First Amendment generally forbids the government from curtailing speech, not all such restrictions are equal. Courts, all right, whatever. We conclude that a tradition of restricting the trademarking of names has coexisted with the First Amendment, and the names clause fits within the tradition, Thomas concluded. In other words, the agency can, in fact, say no. That the particulars of the doctrine have shifted over time, the consistent through line is that a person generally had a claim only to his own name. Seems rational to me. The names clause reflects this common law tradition by prohibiting a person from obtaining a trademark of another living person's name without consent. But in her concurring opinion, here we go, Barrett strongly disagreed with that approach. She agreed that the names clause did not violate the First Amendment, but she took issue with Thomas's attempt to ground that decision in a history and tradition analysis, as well as his subsequent refusal to establish a standard for courts to use. In other words, court-made principles, court-made policy, court-made law. That is wrong twice over, Barrett wrote. First, the court's evidence, consisting of loosely related cases from the late 19th and early 20th century, does not establish a historic analog for the names clause. Second, the court never explains why hunting for historical forebears on a restriction by restriction basis is the right way to analyze the constitutional question. So what did she do? Well, she created her own analysis. She undertook her own review of the relevant history, concluded it was much less clear than such a tradition existed. She noted Thomas did not fully grapple with countervailing evidence from the 19th century U.S. courts, address key differences between the current federal trademark law and its predecessors. You don't have to, when you're writing a book, when you're writing about history, when you're speaking about things, or when you're writing a court decision, provide all the analysis of the viewpoint that is not the prevailing viewpoint. Barrett even noted that the legislative history, the Leahy Act, suggested the names clause drafters intended to go beyond the existing common law approach, and she goes on. What is striking is seeing similar critiques coming from Barrett herself. The court's second newest justice has previously identified herself with the originalist camp. During her confirmation hearings in 2020, she also recognized that even originalists could disagree with one another about the original public meaning of constitutional provisions. She said it's not a mechanical exercise, she told the senators. In Vidal, however, she was not merely questioning whether Thomas got the history right. She was disputing its relevance altogether. And what this gentleman has done, but he doesn't realize it, is he's demonstrated that when Barrett was at her confirmation hearing, her testimony was misleading. It is in stark contrast to what she's doing on the court today. And this isn't the only case. I've told you before. I could see something wasn't right. There's not another host, TV or radio or podcast in America who has pointed this out to you. This is what I do. For Barrett, the names clause and other restrictions similar to it could be upheld independently of any historical tradition. She said, content-based criteria for trademark registration do not abridge the right to free speech, so long as they reasonably relate to the preservation of the mark owner's goodwill and the prevention of consumer confusion, she wrote. A particular restriction will serve those goals if it helps ensure that registered marks actually function as source identifiers. That sounds suspiciously like the sort of balancing test that many originalists hope to remove from American constitutional law. And that is 100% correct from this, I assume he's a leftist. She's now creating her own balancing test. In fact, she's now creating her own tests. In fact, she's now creating her own, only known to her, methodology for analysis. In a separate concurring opinion in the trademark case, Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Chief Justice John Roberts also wrote that something like the names clause might be well constitutional, even absent such a historical pedigree, citing Barrett's opinion. And I've warned you about Roberts, and I've warned you about Kavanaugh from the moment he was nominated. Only two of the court's other members, Justice Sam Alito and Neil Gorsuch, actually agreed with Thomas on it. Kavanaugh and Roberts did not offer the comprehensive critique of Thomas that Barrett did, nor did they join her concurring opinion. There are not 6 constitutionalists on the court. There are 3. And we'll see how these other 3 go in 2 critical opinions on immunity and obstruction. And I'll be here to explain it. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The war against Donald Trump, which is ongoing, has turned our legal and political system into a nightmare. With the 2024 elections on the horizon, we could be facing a period of unprecedented instability and uncertainty. But you can protect and grow your wealth by investing in gold and silver. Precious metals have always served as a safe haven during times of political and economic turmoil. And with the expert guidance of my good friends at Advantage Gold, you can navigate this insane climate with confidence. Call Advantage Gold right now. 800-900-8000. They'll send you a free 2024 gold and silver kit that tells you how to help keep your money safe when things are bad. Plus, tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. Call Advantage Gold, 800-900-8000. Get your special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 for qualified customers. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. We've got a lot more to do. For those of you who are headed for the roof to do a swan dive, just hang in there. We've got a lot of time left before this election. But I'm a realist. I've got a lot of scars from these battles of the past. I don't chase this poll or that poll. I tell you what they say. But the principle is always the same. Fight like you're 20 points behind. I'll be back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Folks, if it's just me saying it, and I don't know that's the case, I just can't listen to everybody. If it's just me saying it, so be it. So be it. I don't know if we're ahead or behind. I don't know what's going to happen on Election Day or 5 weeks before Election Day with early voting or 1 week after with vote harvesting. I don't have the foggiest idea. I don't know how many illegal aliens are being registered. All I know is they are. Litigation's all set on the Democrat side. The New York Times was very proud of the effort by a whole conga line and of conspiratorial left-wing organizations. I don't know. But I do know this. If we take solace in polls, we're going to lose. People keep talking about a possible landslide. I sure as hell hope so, but what are you talking about a landslide for? Reagan didn't talk about a landslide before he had two massive landslides. You don't have a landslide until people vote. And they need to vote bigly. Now, I know it can be said after an election, if we have a landslide, Mark, you want... I didn't say we wouldn't. I said fight. Fight. I don't know of any great general, whether the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, and beyond, who before the fight said, we have this in the bag. We've got more soldiers, we've got more equipment, we've got this in the bag. No, that's not what a leader says to his troops, his forces. As a matter of fact, Mr. Producer, I want you to pull up that George Patton speech, okay? See if you can find it for next segment. We have so many clips. Poor Mr. Producer. I don't even know how he keeps track of all this stuff. But George Patton said, we will beat them, and you're going to do this, and this is how you're going to... But he gave a speech about defeating the enemy, that you can defeat them. And you'll learn how to defeat them, and you'll know you have to defeat them. He didn't say we have this in the bag. He said what we're going to do to the enemy. Now, obviously, war is different than politics, but it's the same mentality. The left certainly plays it that way. This is a battle for the survival of the country. You have a man who's now leading Trump on the issue of democracy, for God's sakes. And so there needs to be pushback. You don't ignore it. You know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are in terms of the public in our case. But, Mark, you just said don't follow the polling. I said don't let the polling affect your enthusiasm, your work, your focus. Your need, if you're doing nothing, to participate, even pick up a phone and call somebody, make sure they're registered. Something, anything. Because people are not going to do this if every day they're just looking at polls. Okay, let the talk show hosts look at polls. Let them talk about polls till they're blue in the face. Some of them don't know how to fill their time. If that's how they want to fill their time, that's fine by me. But don't let that affect you in the real world on the ground. Our enemy has a hell of a ground game. They turn their people out. We have been weak, so we need to strengthen it so we can beat them and win. We need to at least to ourselves, acknowledge it. And we have aligned against us the media, Hollywood, even big money. Despite the fact that Trump's done an amazing job raising money, they're raising more. And they're not raising it from little people. They're raising it from billionaires who hate democracy, who like oligarchy. They're oligarchs. Because they know the Democrat Party will take care of them. They know it. And their interests and their needs and all the rest of it. Same with Hollywood. And yet there's this piece in Axios. Senior Democrats, including some of President Biden's aides, are increasingly dubious about his theory for victory in November, which relies on voter concerns about January 6th, political violence, and democracy, as Donald Trump's character. So we have this poll from Fox that says this is now the number one issue. Is it? I don't have the foggiest idea if it really is. But let's say it's number 7. Do not let them get away with it. Any of these issues. Why it matters. Biden's core inner circle hasn't lost faith in that approach, the product of Biden and his longtime aide, Michael Donilon. Donilon. But that puts them on an island within much of the party about what will decide the election, as polls consistently show Biden tied or behind even after a slight bump following Trump's criminal conviction. Several polls have indicated voters are deeply concerned about democracy, but they're most worried about inflation. Okay, goes on. It goes on. So what are we to make of this? Nothing. They're going to run whatever campaign they run. Let me try this. It's like a football game. You're trying to anticipate what the other side's going to do. The other side, in many cases, tells you what they're going to do. So you got to deal with it. You don't analyze whether their strategy is a good one or a bad one. You got to work on your strategy to make sure you defeat them. And if they're going to try democracy, figure out a way to defeat them. Abortion, figure out a way to defeat them. And, of course, go on offense. Your strongest players, that is, your strongest positions, your strongest policies. Go on offense. You have a defense, you have an offense. You've got to defend against these allegations that you're against democracy, but you must go on offense. If you just run defense, you're never going to score. I hope people understand what I mean. Now, these teams don't look at the odds in advance and say, all right, we're ahead in the odds, so we're going to win. There's not a coach on the face of the earth that's going to think that way. Cares about the odds. Same in politics. There's been upsets and there's been landslides. Who cares what the pollsters say? You've got to fight them on every issue. You got to prioritize. You've got to prioritize. And you have to pound away on them. You got to take their issues and turn them against them, like democracy. Mr. Fascism is now Mr. Democracy. Mr. I support the position the Klan took on school integration is now Mr. I don't know, civil rights. So you got to hammer away. You got to fight it. And it can be done. Joe Biden is a great president, and great presidents get reelected is another common Danilian refrain. Danilian, one of the most experienced and understated Democratic operatives in the country, has worked with Biden since 1981. He's argued that polls aren't fully reflecting voter concerns about democracy. Well, according to the Fox poll, they are. Are they or aren't they? Who cares? It's an issue. Whether it's the number one issue or the number three issue. Don't let somebody get away with calling you a tyrant, a dictator, somebody who's going to destroy our country and lock people up. It's a lie. Has to be dealt with. Or the lie changes perceptions. How many? I don't know. An election that's going to come down to a few 100,000 people in a handful of states, they tell us. Changing the perceptions of a few people seems to matter to me. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need. I want you to listen to the Patton speech and how he approached victory. Go.
I want you to remember that no bastard ever won war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country. And then, all this stuff you've heard about America not wanting to fight, wanting to stay out of the war, is a lot of horse dung. Americans traditionally love to fight. All real Americans love the sting of battle. When you were kids, you all admired the champion marble shooter, the fastest runner, big league ball players, the toughest boxers. Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time. I wouldn't give a hoot in hell for a man who lost and laughed. That's why Americans have never lost and will never lose a war, because the very thought of losing is hateful to America. Now, an army is a team. It lives, eats, sleeps, fights as a team. This individuality stuff is a bunch of crap. The bilious bastards who wrote that stuff about individuality for the Saturday Evening Post don't know anything more about real battle than they do about fornicating. Now, we have the finest food and equipment, the best spirit, and the best men in the world. You know, my God, I actually pity those poor bastards we're going up against. By God, I do. We're not just going to shoot the bastards. We're going to cut out their living guts and use them to grease the treads of our tanks. We're going to murder those lousy Hun bastards by the bushel. Now, some of you boys, I know, are wondering whether or not you'll chicken out under fire. Don't worry about it. I can assure you that you will all do your duty. The Nazis are the enemy. Wade into them. Spill their blood. Shoot them in the belly. When you put your hand into a bunch of goo that a moment before was your best friend's face, you know what to do. Now, there's another thing I want you to remember. I don't want to get any messages saying that we are holding our position. We're not holding anything. Let the Hun do that. We are advancing constantly, and we're not interested in holding on to anything except the enemy. We're going to hold on to him by the nose, and we're going to kick him in the ass. We're going to kick the hell out of him all the time, and we're going to go through him like crap through a goose. There's one thing that you men will be able to say when you get back home, and you may thank God for it. 30 years from now, when you're sitting around your fireside with your grandson on your knee, and he asks you, what did you do in the great World War II? You won't have to say, well, I shoveled in Louisiana. All right, now you sons of bitches, you know how I feel. Well, I will be proud to lead you wonderful guys into battle anytime, anywhere. That's all.
But what did the pundits say? Who cares? What were our odds of victory? Who cares? Who cares? It's my favorite movie of all time. In my lifetime, I've probably watched it 40 or 50 times, and it's a long movie. But so what? And I remember part of that movie also, where he's forced to, or has to, or is ordered to, rush to the Battle of the Bulge. Because our forces and the British forces, while they were under attack, they were stuck. It was really Hitler's last stand, and he threw everything he had in that battle, called the Battle of the Bulge. And we were pinned down for a long time, as were the Brits. We needed to get more forces there, and we needed to get them there fast. So Patton's army made a beeline to the battle. But they didn't believe they would have enough gasoline for their tanks, and it go on and on and on. And so what did he do? He encouraged his troops. He inspirited his troops. That we need to get into that battle. We need to get there as fast as we can. And that's what they did. Despite the snow, near the end of the travel to the battle, the skies cleared. The Army Air Corps showed up. There's that scene where Patton goes into the church, Mr. Producer. Says he doesn't pray that all that much. He says, I think it's a priest. And he says, do you have a prayer? You have a prayer for the weather? Priest looked at him funny. And he said, well, by God, whatever you have, let's hear it. Say it. We need help. The next day, the sky cleared. Near the very end, they got the gasoline that they needed. And they swung into that battle. Made a huge difference. Look, folks, I'm just trying to find different ways, analogies to explain that we have to think about elections differently. And we have to think about this election differently. There's a lot of static. There's a lot of polls. There's a lot of hosts who are surface level. And they're going to go on. And I'm not putting anybody in particular down. Nobody. I'm just saying they'll get into the polls and talk to the... I don't care. I don't care. We'll mention them in order to use them to inspire people to fight, regardless of what the polls say. But the polls are the polls. That's it. Thomas Dewey was supposed to beat Harry Truman. Well, it didn't work out that way. We were supposed to have a landslide in the off-year election. Well, it didn't work out that way, and I could go on and on. I'll be right back. Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Well, we have our friend Richard Goldberg with us, and no better expert on what goes on in the Middle East than he. And he also worked in the National Security Council for President Trump. Richard Goldberg... Benjamin Netanyahu put out this really harmless video, 45 seconds long, saying, hey, look, we need our weapons, we need our ammunition. It's been promised to us Effectively, Congress paid for it and passed it. And we're not getting what we need. I mean, we got Hezbollah in the north. We're trying to defeat Hamas. I'm adding a little bit of meat to this. And he said he hopes that that the slow movement will speed up. So the Biden administration went in full character assassination mode. They go to their favorite backstabbing Israeli, who backstabs, in my view, the administration in Israel. And that's Barak Rabin, over there at the Axios. They go to Politico. They go to the Washington Post. It's all over the place. We don't know what he's talking about. We don't know what he's an ingrate. We don't know what he's talking about. Well, Richard, I have article after article where the administration is bragging that they're withholding weapons, they're withholding ammunition, they're sitting on F-15s, they're doing all these things. Bernie Sanders says it's not enough. The moron senator in Maryland says we got to do more, we got to cut them off. Now, I'm confused. Are they slow-walking ammunition and weapons or cutting them off as the administration has been bragging? Or is the administration is now saying today, we don't really know what they're talking about? What's going on?
Mark, they are 100% absolutely withholding key munitions from Israel. We know that to be true. The reason why the administration started briefing people about what they wanted people to know about that they were withholding is because there were starting to be press reports weeks ago coming from industry sources, American contractors, who were ready to ship weapons to Israel, who were told to take things off of airplanes, take things off of ships, don't send them all of a sudden by the White House. And according to those reports, these were not some dumb bombs, 2,000-pound bombs. These were precision-guided munitions, the conversion kits that Israel needs to take a dumb bomb and make it a precision weapon. And they don't want people to know that. They want the narrative to be, we are not going to give Israel these big bombs that can kill a lot of civilians, even though, of course, we know that's a whole bunch of baloney. Hamas propaganda, as if a democracy like Israel, a moral country, is going to try to target civilians. We know they're not going to do that. But what they don't want you to know is that they're actually withholding the precision-guided munitions that Israel needs to effectively do the job, not just in Gaza, but also in Lebanon against Hezbollah, because if they drain Israel of these precision-guided munitions, if they don't have the JDAMs and the spice bombs that they need to take on both Hamas and Hezbollah, then all they have are bigger dumb bombs left, and they'll start running out of those as well. And they're going to fear in Israel, oh my gosh, if we just use the dumb bombs, we might have more civilian casualties. We can't do that either. It's all part of a strategy to strangle Israel into conceding to both Hamas and to Hezbollah, Iran ultimately. So what do you have here? The conclusion is, whether he's directly colluding or not, the president has made himself an effective partner with the Islamic Republic of Iran in the supreme leader's ring of fire strategy around Israel. The Iranians are the ones with the terror groups firing on Israel, and the President of the United States is the one squeezing Israel into surrender. That's what's happening. And to have the leader of a free country of Israel have to take to a video like that to very subtly, gently say, hey, things have been going slow, but Secretary Blinken assured me they're going to speed up. I hope so. He didn't come out guns blazing. But the fact that he felt he needed to do this because other channels weren't working was a big sign. And I got to say, the reaction of the White House being over-the-top denials, this is outrageous, what is he accusing us of? Someone doth protest too much, I would say.
Well, they were bragging about it before. And as I recall, the Republicans in the House actually passed legislation to try and prevent Biden from withholding weapons, did they not?
They did. It's sitting in the Senate.
Okay, so were they just reacting to nothing? We had two Democrats that were blocking F-15s, 50 of them, that were ordered by Israel, prepared to go to Israel, and they're still, even though they've lifted their hold, the administration is still slow-walking those F-15s, is it not?
Correct.
And I remember reading articles. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, cumulatively, the precision-guided munitions, that's stuff that they need today. F-15s, that's going to be several years. They need to notify.
Well, but they need them. They need them with Hezbollah. They know how to fly the F-15, in my humble opinion. And here's the other thing. I have articles in front of me here, and I used to read them on the air as they came out. They were withholding tank shells from the Israelis. They were withholding other types of common munitions that the Israelis need. Benjamin Netanyahu wouldn't put out a tape like that if he didn't know exactly what the hell's going on here. So for this administration to go on and act like, well, we're giving them everything they want, there's only one shipment, that's just a lie, isn't it?
It is a lie. It is absolutely a lie. We have multiple press reports, and the President of the United States' own statement on CNN, which makes it very clear. He's not just doing this, he's proud that he's doing this because he wants to go tell all of his pro-Hamas base. He wants to be able to walk into the DNC with all the Hamasniks around and say, don't worry, I've been cutting off Israel from all the weapons that they need to defend themselves. He's proud of that. The people inside that administration are proud of that.
As a matter of fact, Richard Goldberg, I want you to stick with me for about a minute and a half, and I want to play it. We've actually had it. Wasn't long ago. It was May 8th of this year, but they're in Burnett on CNN. Cut 14, Mr. Producer. Go.
I want to ask you about something happening as we sit here and speak, and that, of course, is Israel is striking Rafah. I know that you have paused, Mr. President, shipments of 2,000-pound U.S. bombs to Israel due to concern that they could be used in any offensive on Rafah. Have those bombs, those powerful 2,000-pound bombs, been used to kill civilians in Gaza?
Civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of those bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers. And I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah.
There it is. Hold on. I knew I heard it and read it somewhere. So it goes all the way down to artillery shells. Now, before I finish this, Rich Goldberg, they weren't dropping 2,000-pound bombs on civilians, were they?
No. Of course not.
So what the hell is he talking about?
This is all Hamas propaganda. Why did we build a $320 million pier to nowhere that apparently is already being dismantled without ever working to solve a famine that never existed? All of this has been ever since the Michigan primary and the president deciding this is bad politics for me. I got to cut bait. I'm no longer for Israel. That's what all of this is about. He wants everything to stop. Who cares where Hamas is on the battlefield? Who cares what Hezbollah's threat looks like in Lebanon? Who cares what Iran's doing on its nuclear program? I just want it all to stop. Israel just needs to stop so I can get through November. I think that's exactly what's going on here.
And he can claim that he brought peace to the Middle East. That's what he wants to be able to claim. I brought a settlement. I brought in a... Now, here's the other thing. Hezbollah is firing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rockets into Israel, serious rockets built by the Iranians, paid for by us in many respects, directly and indirectly. Israel's preparing to go in there and put an end to this. It's going to be a very brutal war. They have about 100,000 terrorists in their army, so to speak. And Biden sends another hack over there to tell Netanyahu and that government to stand down. How do you stand down when another country's firing cumulatively thousands of missiles into your country?
You can't. Just imagine this. I mean, this has got to be the comparison for any American who's listening to understand what's happening. Let's just say there was a massive terrorist organization with missiles and drones on the Canadian border with the United States, and it was firing on a daily basis into Michigan and into Wisconsin and into Minnesota, and we have had to evacuate all of those states south. And now they're going to start throwing missiles farther south. Now it's going to go into Illinois. It's going to go into Ohio. It's going to go into Indiana. And we're supposed to just sit there and do nothing? We're just supposed to say, hey, I'm sorry, there's an election coming. Somebody doesn't want us to defend ourselves. We're just going to have to give up these states permanently and make our country smaller and allow this terrorist organization to continue firing further and further and further south and shrink the United States. It's not possible for a democracy to sit there and allow this to happen. It's ludicrous. It is actually existential, only it's not the size of the United States of America with one or two states under attack. It's the size of New Jersey in the state of Israel. And it's shrinking de facto by not being able to respond and push Hezbollah back from its border to where, by the way, the United Nations itself said Hezbollah was supposed to be north of the Litani River 18 years ago after the last Lebanon war. So, again, President Biden is taking Iran's side in this. We're giving sanctions relief to Iran. We're pumping the money that Iran's using to fund all of these wars around the Middle East, and then telling the Israelis, I'm not going to give you the weapons to defend yourself, so that you have to submit to Iran and its proxies, because I want peace and quiet to claim that I've done something before the election. It is completely outrageous. It's antithetical to our values. It's antithetical to our interests. And it's something that the Congress has to fight. And to your point, Mark, the Senate has the bill to do it. We should be mounting a massive campaign right now. No, nothing else in the Senate. We want this bill at the House passed to go through. Then you force the president's hand, and everything that Israel needs to defend itself gets put on a plane.
Mm-hmm. Hezbollah is a creation of Iran, and it is a real army with real weapons, and Israel needs to fight them. And so, are we to believe Joe Biden last month? Are we to believe Joe Biden today? Even this sort of reprobate reporter is a little surprised. Now, wait a minute. Shells that are used in tanks, you're withholding them too? He says, yes, we're going to. Okay, they went into Rafah, Richard. So he must be withholding them. He must be withholding other things that Israel needs that we're not even aware of at this point, don't you think?
Absolutely. And remember, if Israel has to go into southern Lebanon, they're going to need tank shells. They're going to need artillery. They're going to need JDAMs. He's holding up everything Israel needs to actually respond to Hezbollah, not just to finish off Hamas. And I think that's exactly what this is all about.
And I don't think the prime minister would have put out that audio, and I don't think he'd be going to the United States Congress to speak if his back wasn't against the wall in his dealings with this administration. One other thing while I have you, it looks like Iran is really, really close now with its nuclear weapons program. There was to be a meeting in Washington, apparently, with some of the Israeli government's top officials, like Dermer and so forth, and top officials in the Biden administration, and they either canceled it or postponed it because of Netanyahu's video. Are these people serious? These bastards in Iran are going to have a nuclear weapon before we blink. And they're playing games over the prime minister's video? What do you make of that?
Well, it's really interesting. A different story had leaked out just before the video and all of this chaos that had come out that talked about the fact that the Israelis have new intelligence that Iran is working on weaponization. So not just the enrichment, the production of the enriched uranium that we hear about on TV, and that is itself a very bad direction that President Biden has allowed Iran to go down. But now the actual work to build a weapon that we've been told for years is not happening. There is some sort of intelligence now that says Iran is working on the computer modeling to build the weapon, and that's a very important thing that's happening. That means that the president is funding Iran's nuclear weapons program, and he can't say he's not. He is providing billions of dollars to Iran, and he's getting nothing but Iran advancing its nuclear weapons in return. There is no putting Iran in a box. There's no restrictions on Iran. He's literally subsidizing Iran's advancement toward a nuclear weapon. I think potentially he doesn't want to talk to the Israelis about this. He doesn't want to actually have this conversation. He wants to be in denial that there's weaponization work going on because he knows that his policy is driving this in the wrong direction.
Yes, and he's withholding, I think, ammo and rest from Israel because ultimately he doesn't want them to attack this site in Iran, which the Israelis could have done last month after the Iranians fired missiles into Israel. It's exactly the wrong government. The wrong government at the wrong time, that is in the United States. This is reprehensible. This man is going to get us into World War III. I think Donald Trump is right. Richard Goldberg, I want to thank you very much. God bless you, my friend.
You too.
All right, take care of yourself. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need. Holy mackerel, 2/3 of the program's over. The Power Hour's next. Don't miss it. I'm loaded for bear. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877. Here's some inspiring thoughts. This is a good Trump ad. Inspiring thoughts from Kamala Harris. Cut one, go.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time. So the importance of community banks is they are, as they are called, they're in the community, led by members of the community. They are people who understand the capacity of the community, the needs of the community, the culture of the community. Space is exciting. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree that...
All right, shut up. I've had enough of her. Now, I want you to compare... By the way, Jane Fonda's all in with Joe Biden. That ought to tell you a lot, America, how the radical Marxist left has thrown in. I want to play something for you that really doesn't flow into what I've been discussing, except that it is so profound by such a remarkable person. You don't hear me say that often, that I want you to hear it. And that's good enough, I think. It's Douglas Murray, who I've come to really like. I've never personally met. I don't believe I've even had a conversation with him off the air, but I'm a great admirer of his. He's in a debate in Canada with the pro-Islamists and others. And I want you to hear what he has to say, folks. And hat tip to Twitter, a.k.a. X. Cut 17, go.
Well, thank you very much, Rudyard. It's a great pleasure to be back at the Monk debates. When I was last here a couple of years ago, I just returned from the front line of the war in Ukraine, where I was with the Ukrainian armed forces. And for most of the last 8 months, I've been in Israel and Gaza, following the war there as closely as I can. And I won't go into all the details now that I could give you of what's happening. But I would just put it in perspective in this way, first of all. What happened on the 7th of October was not just a massive attack on innocent people inside Israel. It was the equivalent to about 6,000 Canadians being massacred and burned in their homes in one day. It's the equivalent of about 1,500 of your fellow Canadians being taken hostage. You know, you would have thought after an attack like the one that Hamas instigated, that started this terrible war, you would have thought that there would be some sympathy for the world, from the world. You might have thought the world would pay attention to the attack and at least pay attention to the people behind it. You might have expected, like me, that there might have been a worldwide opposition to the terrorists and rapists and murderers of Hamas. You might have thought there would be hatred around the world erupting, that the government of Qatar and its mouthpiece, Al Jazeera, its funding of Hamas and hosting of the leadership of Hamas in Qatar. You might have thought there'd have been an outpouring of rage at the Islamic Revolutionary Government in Tehran, but no. There was an immediate outpouring of rage against the state that had been attacked. Bring back our girls, we had 10 years ago in the war in northern Nigeria, which I also covered. Bring back our girls. No international campaign saying bring back our Jewish children. Believe all women, we've been told for years. But, turns out, not if the raped women are Jews. Israel is the only country in the world which, when it's attacked, gets attacked more. You know, the interesting thing about anti-Semitism is, as my late friend Jonathan Sachs said, it's a shape-shifting virus. It moves across the centuries. When you could hate people for their religion, the Jews were hated for their religion. Then you couldn't hate people for that anymore, so people hated the Jews for their race. And then, after the 20th century, people realized that wasn't such a great idea either. Now, the Jews are hated not for their religion or their race, but for having a state. People around the world hate them so much for it that Israelis are attacked when they have hostages taken, and this is to remember the 100 hostages still in captivity in Gaza, who, if they were given back by Hamas today, the war would be over. And they're also attacked when they rescue their hostages. You know, the interesting thing about anti-Semitism is the Jews can never win, because historically they've been hated for being rich and for being poor. They've been hated for integrating and for not integrating. They were hated for being stateless. Remember, rootless cosmopolitans, the far right used to say. Now they're hated for having a state. Today, the only really acceptable form of anti-Semitism, aside from the sewers of the far right, the only real tolerated form of anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. Zionism, as we just heard, is simply the right of the Jews to self-determination in their historic homeland. That's all. Anti-Semitism, as we've also just heard, is double standards against Jewish people, or cruel and unfair treatment of people because they're Jews. This isn't very far away from home here. If this isn't anti-Semitism, can the audience here tell me why the following things have happened since October the 7th? Why in a Montreal suburb a synagogue should be firebombed, as happened in November? Why there should have been gunshots against the yeshiva? Why in Toronto a bookstore owned by a Jew should be attacked? Why a Molotov cocktail?
Now, you know there's a bad word that he's going to use, right, Mr. Producer? We got it? Okay, go ahead.
Community Centre in Montreal, why a Toronto Jewish deli in North York was firebombed, why in Toronto the Orthodox synagogue was vandalized, why in Toronto 2 men opened fire the other week on a Jewish girls' school. If it isn't anti-Semitism, tell me why just a week ago pro-Hamas protesters tried to go through Jewish areas in this city shouting not just Allahu Akbar, but, and I quote, sorry for the language, filthy Zionist pigs, dirty Zionist rats. Have you heard that language before? The Jews have. Now look, if you are interested in this motion, just bear this in mind. It's not about Netanyahu, it's not about this war, it's about double standards, and one question hovers over it above all, the question of who would protect the Jews. Who would you trust to protect them? The Europeans? The Arab world? No. History shows only one people will protect the Jewish people. The Jewish people. That's what Zionism is.
Absolutely brilliant. That was just 6 minutes. And then you see Blinken, Biden, Obama in the shadows. You see Sanders, Tlaib. You see the Democrat Party and the Democrat Party media. You saw Martha Raddatz on a Sunday show, Sunday before last, attacking the Israelis for saving 4 of their own who were taken hostage. Worried about the casualties on the other side. There's no difference between Hamas and the Palestinians. They're all Palestinians. We've now had surveys, 2 from a Palestinian survey organization, 2 from an Arab survey organization. And by supermajorities, they support Hamas. And by supermajorities, they support what happened on October 7th. That's the bottom line. And it seems to me this administration does not believe in the state of Israel. It does not believe in the state of Israel, has done virtually nothing to fight the Jew hatred in our country, let alone the people in Israel. Now, you might say, well, they've given them arms. They've given them enough arms. They've already had arms. Many of the arms that were already put aside were given to Ukraine. So in many respects, they're providing more inventory to the Israelis because they use that inventory that had been put aside over years to help Ukraine, which is okay. But Congress hasn't cut off aid to Israel. Congress hasn't cut off munitions and armaments to Israel. Biden and Blinken have. They're choking them. They're doing Iran's dirty work, Hamas's dirty work, Hezbollah's dirty work. That's why they're not going to get all their hostages back, certainly not alive. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, America, there is a situation going on in Tennessee, in and around Nashville, where my kids and grandkids live. Our kids and grandkids live. It's getting some attention, but it's not getting enough national attention, so I intend to do that starting this minute. Michael Patrick Leahy is a good man. Every now and then my wife has written pieces for the Tennessee Star there. Michael Patrick Leahy is a conservative, but he's also a media man. He's a writer. He's the CEO and editor-in-chief of the Tennessee Star, which is a great newspaper, as well as others, quite frankly. Now, Michael Patrick Leahy, what is taking place there? Start from the beginning. Concisely tell us what's going on, because this story is going to be very, very important to my audience.
Well, thank you, Mark, for this opportunity. On March 27th, 2023, 28-year-old Audrey Elizabeth Hale, born female, who self-identified as a transgender male using the name Aiden, heavily armed, walked into her former elementary school at Covenant School here in Nashville, and she murdered 3 young 9-year-old students and 3 staffers. Within about 20 minutes, Metro Nashville Police Department arrived and killed her. Subsequently, a massive investigation by Metro Nashville Police took place. And in that investigation, they uncovered a great deal of writings by her, including a journal for the last 3 months of her life that was left in her vehicle at the school, as well as a spiral notebook, sort of an operational plan, and about 20 notebooks that they found from her house, where she was a couple miles away where she lived with her parents. Those notebooks, those journals from the house, went back to about middle school, so about 15 years. All told, probably 500 pages of her writings. So what happened next is, at the Tennessee Star, Mark, we said, okay, we want to get those writings. So we applied through the Tennessee Public Records Act with Metro Nashville Police. They did not deny us, so we filed a lawsuit. Then Metro Nashville Police gave those 500 pages of writings to a judge in state court who's presiding over this, Lucia Miles. She's been reviewing them in camera for over a year. So that's where everything was until earlier this month when we received legally obtained some documents, including 80 pages from the journal that she left in her car and other items. So we started writing about it. We've written about 30 stories on it. And then, you're not going to believe this, Mark. On Monday last, June 10th, I'm, working away. My lawyer...
Now, before we get to this, what did you find in these journals? What did you publish?
Well, of the journals, we found 80 pages of the diary that was kept from January through March of 2023. And they came in the form of 40 images. Each images had 2 pages of the diary. So that's what we have. We haven't published a single one of those.
Mm-hmm.
We have, however, written stories based on those, about 30. So, and it's a very disturbing tale. She was suffering from autism, wanted to kill her father, talked about her imaginary penis. Very, very disturbing. So then I got, on Monday evening, the presiding judge sent me a show cause hearing order requiring me to attend court this Monday to explain to her why I hadn't violated the court orders. Now, this was quite bizarre.
All right, let's stop right there. Why you violated the court orders? There was no court order involving you, correct?
That is correct. It's even weirder, Mark. In her court order, she said she got a media call from somebody claiming we had published documents under her review. Who did that? A reporter for WSMV News, a NBC affiliate here in Nashville, Stacey Cameron, called her up and said, hey, falsely said we published the documents and that we violated this non-existing court order. You ought to charge this guy with contempt of court. That's what she did at 4:44 p.m. on Monday.
So, did you go to court Monday?
Well, the order came June 10th. I hired a fantastic First Amendment attorney. His name is Daniel Horowitz, Horwitz. He pointed out to her in an emergency motion that she couldn't do that because she had to give me notice. So she said, okay, I'm going to deny your motion to set aside, but you got to show up anyways. Okay, so we showed up on Monday. The court hearing had nothing to do with me. Instead, what the judge said was, I want to hear from all the participants and see if the stories based on these 80 pages makes my ruling on the 500 pages I have moot. They all said no. So, but at the end of the hearing, Mark, she said, I'm going to issue a court order. I may order a special prosecutor to go after you, Leahy. So stick around.
Go after you for what? First of all, the court order doesn't apply to you. You can't just issue a court order that applies universally and generally to everybody.
Well, my attorney at the hearing, in the 7 minutes he had of the hour and 10 minutes of the hearing, said to her, well, Your Honor, what court order did my client violate? She said, I'm not...
All right, keep it right there, Michael. What court order did my client violate? Now, remember, America, this man is a journalist. This man is a journalist. He hasn't written about the substance of the journal. And this judge has dragged him in front of her based on an order that has nothing to do with him. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the research arm of conservative media. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
The great newspaper is called the Tennessee Star. Michael, Patrick Leahy, Michael Patrick Leahy. So, we left off where the court says, what about her order? You guys say, what does this order have to do with us? What does she say?
Right. So my attorney says, what court order did you claim that my client violated? And the judge, Judge Leahy Miles, tells him, I'm not going to allow you to ask that question here, Mr. Horowitz. He says, why? You called my client in here to show cause why you shouldn't charge him with contempt of court for just publishing documents or stories about documents he legally obtained. To which the judge said, oh, no, that's not why we're here today, Mr. Horowitz. We're here so I can just get the landscape of where this case is right now.
What?
And everybody said, no, I kid you not, Mark. I kid you not. And my attorney then went on to say, well, but Your Honor, nobody here said Mr. Leahy's done anything wrong or violated any of your orders. And she shut him down. She said, stop it. Basically, I'm not going to do that right now. The time is not ripe for this. So the hearing ended.
So now what happens?
Well, now we're waiting on whatever her order is going to be. She has threatened and still threatens to set up a special prosecutor, an obscure rule under Tennessee Criminal Procedures Rule 42B that does allow a judge to appoint a friend of the court to investigate someone they think may have committed criminal contempt. It's very rarely been used in the state of Tennessee. The last time we could find that it was used, Mark, was back in 1995 when an attorney in a case, after the outcome was not favorable to him, started yelling and screaming at the jury. That's the only time we can find it.
So where can you go now? Probably you just have to sit and wait this out?
Well, Mark, the reaction to her conduct and really her denial of my civil rights and her denial of my right to have my attorney respond to the basic purpose of the show cause hearing has not been well received throughout all of Nashville. And so we'll just wait and see if she's going to assign a special prosecutor. She has no evidence. She has no reason. I've done nothing wrong. I'm just exercising my First Amendment rights. I have legally obtained these documents, and I have every right in the world, if I want to publish all these documents. But I've taken a more cautious approach because she's supposed to make a decision in the next couple of weeks about whether or not she'll release all 500 pages. And so we were just going to wait and see. But we'll see. I mean, she may appoint a special prosecutor, but I'm just going to say there's no crime here. We have to guess what the crime is, I suppose, Mark.
What are they afraid of in these documents? Are you able to even tell me? If not, don't. But there seems to be, it's like these are classified documents. I mean, it's about this individual who went into this school and shot it up, and the secrecy surrounding this is unbelievable.
There's a couple things to tell you here. First, she's only under review, the 500 or so pages of writings of the Covenant killer. But we have obtained legally other documents, which are blockbusters. One document is a memo from the FBI to the Metro Nashville Police Chief, John Drake, May 11th, 2023. A 3-page memo. The subject line is Protection of Legacy Tokens. Have you ever heard of a legacy token, Mark?
No. What is it?
It is a term invented by the FBI 4 or 5 years ago. It relates to any video or writing or social media posting left behind by a mass murderer after a mass murder takes place. And it explains their motivation, and they take credit for it. Now, the FBI wrote from their Quantico, Virginia, Behavioral Analysis Unit, the Critical Response Group, wrote to the chief of police here in Nashville on May 11th and said, don't ever release these legacy documents. 1, because there'll be copycats. 2, radio pontificators will misinterpret them, and the people will misunderstand them. And and certain groups, Mark, might be hurt by it. Basically, transgender killers, right? But Mark, wait, there's more. In this memo, the FBI said, "Oh, by the way, Metro Nashville Police Chief, there's precedent for destroying these kind of legacy tokens."
Oh, geez.
These documents. And basically, they say in 1999, the Columbine killer videotapes were destroyed. So they didn't say destroy the documents, but they basically said,
is the public ever going to know what happened here with this woman?
Oh, yes. We have another blockbuster, which we just released today, Mark, and that is this woman was treated by Vanderbilt University Medical Center at Vanderbilt Psychiatric for 22 years. 2001, and we have police notes of documents obtained from her treatment there from Vanderbilt University Medical Center professionals in which she said she wanted to kill her father and fantasized about a mass shooting in a school. There's a duty to warn law here, Mark, in Tennessee, and from what we can tell, nobody at Vanderbilt University Medical Center followed that duty to warn. The father was not warned, and no other precautions were undertaken.
Well, I guess you're going to stay on it as long as they don't throw you in jail for some absurd reason that you can't even figure out, right?
Well, Mark, it's only 10 days in jail. I can do I can do it if necessary, but it won't come to that. If the judge sicks a criminal prosecutor after me and with no evidence puts me in jail for 10 days, you're in for like an hour. It's automatic bail. They book you, come out. On appeal, this thing will be unanimously overturned.
I agree with you. Well, keep us informed, as I know you will. To me, this is really outrageous. All this is going on because they don't want more information coming out about this individual who slaughtered these people. It was weird from day one when the local police there said, no, we're not releasing it. I mean, I've never heard of a case like this where all the information is not released. There's nobody to prosecute. She's dead.
Yeah, it's very weird, Mark. If I could ask if any of your listeners want to help us with our legal fees, then go to TennesseeStar.com, TennesseeStar.com/donate, TennesseeStar.com/donate. I have a fantastic First Amendment attorney, but as you know, Mark, it is not inexpensive to hire a fantastic First Amendment attorney.
No, it's not. All right, brother. Well, good luck. Keep us informed. Appreciate you.
Mark, thank you again for this great opportunity.
You bet. Folks, help him out. It's important. Yeah. This case is bizarre, and that's what happens, quite frankly. I'm speaking, not him. When you have these local elected judges that are way over their head and they don't know crap, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, we move along. Remember that $7 billion that was spent, Mr. Producer, to produce 7 or 8 electric vehicle charging stations? So about $1 billion apiece. This is Biden, right? Well, we have another one. $42.5 billion rural high-speed internet plan. Residents in rural America are eager to access this high-speed internet under a $42.5 billion federal modernization plan, but not a single home or business has been connected in nearly 3 years under Biden, who demanded the funding. In fact, no project will break down until sometime next year, and they don't know when. And this is the man who's destroying the electrical grid, who is destroying the combustion engine, who's destroying, even the unions may not realize this, the automobile industry. He's destroying the products in your home. He's going to force us all onto a grid that cannot possibly handle all the electricity. I want you to think about this. 7 electric vehicle charging stations, $7 billion, $1 billion a station. And by the way, these electric vehicle charging stations, they're being stripped of certain precious metals in them by hoodlums. Didn't know about that. And now $42.5 billion and not a single home or business in nearly 3 years has been hooked up to this rural high-speed internet because it doesn't exist yet. Now, that's reason enough to vote against this guy, isn't it? Yeah, I would think so. But so far, no. Well, not no. So far, I can't believe that the guy has even 45% of the people who might vote for him, Mr. Producer. Can you? They'll vote for what? A kumquat, yes. An old Levin line. All right, we'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
My gracious goodness, the show is minutes away. Let us go to Haas, Childress, Texas. I actually know where that is on the Mark Levin app. How are you?
Hi, Mark. Good. I enjoyed the show tonight. Hey, I had something a little on the lighter side on your Patton issue. I went to the Air Force Academy, and I was in training, cadre as a junior. And for basic training, we were Guts Squadron. So blood and guts, Patton. And one of the evening, during the day, we had gone down, gotten uniform, every ribbon that the place had. If you've ever seen the shorts with the Stooges, I look like Curly playing the Nazi with ribbons on the front and the back and everything else. Yeah. Gave the entire Patton speech on the hill behind the cadet chapel that night. Felt sorry for the parents that were there showing the chapel to their little kids because you just read the language or played a speech. And then the next day, walking down on the terrazzo, all the visitors are there at the noon meal formation, and they're looking down. That's me, and I still got my uniform and my entourage, and they're going, "My God, look at how young that guy is! He's a 3-star general." But
wait a minute, you were a 3-star general? I didn't hear you.
Well, Patton. I was
Patton. I saw you were. Okay, got it.
No, I was playing Patton. So I was a 20-year-old kid with a 3-star general uniform on. So it looked funny. But I wanted to read reading the individuality issue that Patton had. That's what's wrong with our military today. There was no individuality. The entire purpose of basic training is to bust everybody down so you're working as a team. Now it's all, well, if you identify as this or that, who cares? It's supposed to be about the military, and then I know you're about to close up, but I'll show you how serious it is. I keep in touch with a lot of guys I flew with. I've got family in. I've had a lot of family in. I don't know anybody today that would either go in under current conditions or have a family member. And so, again, back to your seriousness on the November election, if that doesn't turn, we've got obviously a lot of things wrong. But the military, when you look at all the hot spots, and then if you got time, you were talking about the F-15s with Israel.
I've got to run, but I do appreciate your call and your service, my brother. I really do. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighter, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine, our brothers and sisters in Israel. We have your back, even though Biden does not. And we the people, American citizens right here, God bless each and every one of you, and I'll see you tomorrow.